Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of the Culture Club podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome. I hope you learned something here today. And if you're coming back, then thank you so much for supporting the podcast. My name is Oscar Dalton. I'm a currency collector, amateur vexillographer, and lover of cultures from all over the world. Today's special episode, recommended by veteran of the channel, Dandy Squid, will be on Poland. So, without further ado, let's get into the culture. Poland is a landlocked country in Central Europe that borders the Baltic Sea and Russia via the Kaliningrad Oblast to the north, Lithuania to the northeast, Belarus and Ukraine to the east, Slovakia to the south, Czechia to the southwest, go check out that episode if you haven't seen it yet, and Germany also to the west. Go check out that episode too. It's really good. Poland has a variety of landscapes, from the beautiful beaches of the Baltic Sea in the north to the central lowlands in the center, obviously, and the snow-capped peaks of the Carpathian and Sudeten Mountains in the south. The highest peak in Poland is the Risi Mountain on the Slovak border, towering at around 8,114 feet or 2,473 meters. Poland covers an area of 120,733 square miles, making it around the same size as the American state of New Mexico and the ninth largest European country. Around 38,268,000 people call Poland home, making it the 38th most populated country in the world, and again the ninth most populated country in Europe. Poland is one of the most ethnically homogeneous countries in Europe, with about 98% of the population being Polish. 1% of the remaining population is German, and the other 1% belongs to other ethnic groups, mostly Eastern and Northern European. On the 2019 Polish census, 90% of the Polish population identified as Christian, with 86% of the population being Roman Catholic, 1% being Orthodox Christian, and the remaining 3% being of other Christian denominations, mostly Protestant groups. 6% of the Polish population are atheist or agnostic, and 1% of the Polish population are other religions, mostly Jewish and Muslim. The remaining 3% of people that answered the census left the religion section unanswered or didn't fill it in adequately. This is according to the Polish government, and I've read that they've been doing some shady stuff like altering legal documents, so I would take all of this with a grain of salt. Anyway, the capital city of Poland is Warsaw, with a population of 1.7 million people. There are 11 quote-unquote big cities in Poland, but I'll just go over the next three biggest. Wrocław, pronounced Wrocław in Polish, has a population of 643,893. Krakow, pronounced Kraków in Polish, has a population of 755,050, and the second biggest city in Poland is Lodz, pronounced Łódź in Poland, and fun fact, Łódź also means boat in Poland. Łódź has a population of 768,755. The GDP, or gross domestic product, which is used to measure a country's wealth, of Poland is $1.353 trillion US, which makes Poland the 22nd wealthiest country in the world. The HDI score, which is used to measure a country's standard of living of Poland, is .880. Giving Poland the 35th highest standard of living in the world. Poland is a member of the Schengen area, a group of European countries allowing visa-free, border-free travel, the UN and the EU, the OECD, a group of 37 countries around the world trying to protect democracy, the Three Seas Initiative, a group of countries trying to control the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas, and the Visegrad Four, a military alliance between four Central European countries. Poland uses Central European Time, or UTC+1, and drives on the right side of the road. Those are all the basic facts you need to know about Poland, so let's talk about the government/subdivision part of today's episode. Poland is a unitary, semi-presidential, representative democratic republic. This basically means that a single entity runs the country, and a president is the head of the government. There are two houses in Polish parliament, making it bicameral. The upper house of Polish parliament is the Polish Senate. There are 100 members of the Senate, each representing a legislative district. It uses a first-past-the-post voting system where each citizen picks one of the candidates on the ballot, for their district. There are 49 members in the governing coalition. You might be wondering why there are less than 50 senators in the governing coalition. Well, that's just because the opposition isn't a unified group, and they tend to not vote as a unified group. Of the 49 governing senators, 48 belong to the United Right Party, and 1 belongs to the Independent Senators Circle, a party, or I'm using party in loose terms here, it's not really a party, but they're a group that gives funding to independent senators that sign up with them, and they don't really have any principles or any positions on any main laws. They just leave that up to the actual independent politicians. The opposition has 51 senators. 42 belong to the Civic Coalition, a center-left party. 3 seats belong to the Polish Coalition, a centrist Christian party. 2 seats belong to the Independent Senators Circle, the same one from before. 2 seats belong to the Left Party, a left-wing or center-left party. And 1 seat belongs to the Poland 2050 party, another centrist party. And 1 more seat belongs to Stanislaw Glarski, sorry if I butchered that name, an independent that didn't sign up with the Independent Senators Circle. The Polish people vote on who represents them in the Senate every 4 years, with the last election happening in 2019. The lower house of Polish Parliament is the Sejm. There are 460 members of the Sejm. 234 members are part of the governing coalition. All of them are members of the United Right Party. There's also a confidence and supply coalition that only has 1 independent in it, and they kind of run the whole Sejm and don't really take positions or vote on issues. There are 224 representatives in the opposition. 132 seats belong to the Civic Coalition, the center-left party. 48 seats belong to the Left Party, the left-wing or center party. 24 seats belong to the aforementioned Polish Coalition Party, a Christian centrist party. 11 seats belong to the Confederation Party, a very far right, described as a fascist party by many Polish citizens. 5 seats belong to the Kukiz 15 party, an anti-EU center-right party. 3 seats belong to the Poland 2050 party, an environmentalist centrist party. 1 seat belongs to the German Minority Party. 1 seat belongs to an independent, and 1 seat is vacant because someone resigned without a replacement. Andrzej Duda is the Polish president. Again, I'm sorry for butchering his name. I'm probably going to be slipping up on a lot of the Polish pronunciations here, but I'll try my best. Andrzej Duda is an independent. There's not really anything remarkable about him. He's a little bit Eurosceptic, and he is just a run-of-the-mill career politician. But presidential elections happen every 5 years, and the presidents are elected by popular vote, with the last election happening in July 2020. Now for the subdivisions of Poland. There are 16 voivodeships in Poland, but they don't really have that many powers. The biggest one by population and area is the Masovian voivodeship, with a population of 5.4 million, which includes Warsaw, the capital, and its suburbs, which is pretty much its whole population. That's all I have on the government and subdivisions of Poland, so let's talk about the languages of Poland. The official language of Poland is Polish, but Kashubian and German are also spoken around the country. The Kashubian language is spoken in the Pomeranian region of Poland, which also borders Germany, by around 108,000 people, mostly in Poland, but some in Germany. German is also spoken as a first language by 96,000 Polish citizens. Polish is an Indo-European language that belongs to the Balto-Slavic, Slavic, West Slavic, and Lachitic subfamilies. It's spoken as a first language by 45 million people, and as a second language by an upwards of 5 million people. Some other Lachitic languages are the Kashubian and Slovincian languages, both spoken in Pomerania, Polabian, spoken in eastern Germany, and Silesian, spoken in Silesia. That's really all I know about the languages of Poland. There's not a lot to know. I'm sorry, this was shorter than normal, but let's just talk about some Polish currency. The official currency of the Republic of Poland is the Polish zloty. The ISO code of the zloty is PLN, and the ISO number of the zloty is 985. Just so you all listening know, the plural of zloty is zlotych, so if I say zlotych, you guys know what I mean. I'm not just going to say zlotys because that would make me uncultured, and this is the Culture Club, we cannot have that here. The subdivision of the zloty is the gross, which is 1/100th of the zloty, which means it takes 100 gross to make 1 zloty. I love saying zloty, it's so much fun. The banknotes used in Poland are the 10, 20, 50, 100, and 500 zlotych, and the frequently used coins in Poland are the 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, and 50 gross coins, alongside the 1, 2, and 5 zlotych coins. The only mint in Poland is the Polish mint, or the Monika Polska, which is in Warsaw, and is the only mint in the world that is publicly traded, which means you could buy Polish mint shares on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. Isn't that crazy? Even though Poland is in the EU, around 60% of Polish citizens don't want the EU instead of the zloty. Around 3 zlotych and 77 gross are equal to $1. That's all I have on Polish currency, so let's talk about some Polish flags. To start off this flag segment, I encourage everyone listening to look these flags up as I'm talking about them so you can get an actual visual representation of them. The flag of Poland is a horizontal bicolor of white and red, with the white on top and the red on the bottom. It was adopted in 1980 and modified in 1990. The white represents peace and hope for all the people of Poland, and the red represents the Polish struggle for freedom over the centuries. The coat of arms of Poland is a white eagle with a gold crown on top of a red shield. This has no official meaning since it's so old, representing the Polish people since 1295. At least, it could be older. That's the Polish flag and the coat of arms for you, so let's talk about some Polish foods. Polish cuisine is kind of like a melting pot of German, Czech, Slovak, Silesian, and Ashkenazi Jewish cuisine. The national dish of Poland is bigos stew. Bigos stew, translated into hunter stew in English, is a stew of sauerkraut and a lot of meat. I mean, a lot. The meat is usually kielbasa, a special Polish smoked sausage, and pork, either bacon or pork shoulder. Sometimes it also includes poultry, usually duck or goose. The most well-known Polish food around the world, though, is pierogies. Pierogies are sometimes called Polish dumplings. Pierogies are a thin flour dough filled with either beef or pork, sauerkraut, and mushrooms, with some seasonal variations being sweet, having berries, sweet cottage cheese, and buckwheat. Those are some popular Polish foods, so let's talk about some Polish sports. The national sport of Poland is football, or soccer, with handball, volleyball, and motorcycle racing also being prominent. Some popular Polish athletes from Polish history are, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to mess this up, but Agnieszka Radwańska, the 7th best female tennis player of all time, and Justyna Kowalczyk. Again, I'm very sorry for mispronouncing all of these. She was a very good cross-country skier and won the cross-country skiing world championships 4 times. The most famous Polish athlete from all time is Robert Lewandowski, who plays for the European champions Bayern Munich and the Polish national football team. Lewandowski's national team is the 19th best football team in the world. The top division of Polish football is the Ekstraklasa. The Ekstraklasa is a league of 16 teams, with the winner qualifying for the Champions League qualifying stages, and second and third qualifying for the Europa Conference League qualifying stages. The last place team gets relegated to the Polish 1 Liga, the second division of Polish football. That's all I have on Polish sports, so let's talk about some Polish myths. Before we get into the myths, I just want to apologize. The chair I'm sitting on is very squeaky, so you might be hearing that throughout the video. I just realized that, and I just wanted to say sorry. But anyway, let's get into the myths. The Polish people have a lot of interesting myths, but we don't have that much time, so I'll just go over 2 of them. One is the story of Jasenik. Jasnik was a thief and pirate that sacked villages and ships all over the north coast and gave almost everything he had to the poor. That's not where the story ends, though. When police officers caught up to him and shot him, he stayed alive and ran at blistering speeds, and is still alive to this day, according to some Polish locals. The next story we'll talk about is the story of the Wawel Dragon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'll just be calling it the Wawel Dragon, or maybe the Wawel Dragon. I'm sure it'll change many times. Well, the Wawel Dragon lived in a den under Wawel Hill, near Krakow, and forced the townspeople to give them sacrifices or the dragon would kill them all. The townspeople eventually killed the dragon, but it's really complicated, and there's a kind of story based on it by C.G.P. Gray, and it's very good. It's called I believe it's called The Fable of the Dragon Tyrant, and I think you all should check it out. It's very entertaining, but it's not the exact same thing, so just keep that in mind. That's really it for Polish myths, so let's talk about the history of Poland.
Unfortunately, I think that the peak is still ahead of us, and we will have several thousand, if not more, of the cases. This is a real earthquake also for our economy. Right now, we're fighting with the coronavirus pandemic from the point of view of our healthcare system and not letting new cases into Poland. This is why we have...
That was former Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, and I couldn't find any of Andrzej Duda. I believe that was his name. Sorry, I'm recording this over 2 days, so I don't completely remember, but I couldn't find any of the videos of him speaking because he's relatively new to being Prime Minister or President, and he's even relatively new to politics. So that was Mateusz Morawiecki. I am probably butchering that name, but without further ado, let's just talk about Poland's very long history. The Polish people and the lands of Poland have been partitioned, genocided, and purged from their homeland, but nonetheless, they prevailed. The Christianization of Poland is the first main event in Polish history in 966, mostly because, before that, Poland was home to a bunch of warring tribes that never unified. The Christianization was carried out mostly by the Kingdom of Bohemia, and Poland was much smaller and finally unified after the Christianization, but portions of Poland were still controlled by Prussia, Kievan Rus, Hungary, Moravia, and Lusatia. This Polish kingdom lasted until 1596, when it grew immensely as the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which, fun fact, wasn't really Lithuanian. And the Lithuanians were one of the many ethnic minorities in the country, but we'll talk about that in the Lithuanian episode. Let's just continue. The PLC fought in a bunch of wars up until annexation in 1795 by Russia due to the Great Northern War. Poland was annexed by France in 1807 in the Napoleonic Wars, and were made as a client state under the Duchy of Warsaw. The Russians won it back in 1815 and was made a client state called the Congress Poland until 1867 when Russia fully annexed them. Poland got independence after World War I in 1918 until 1939 when Germany invaded, which started World War II, where Poland was one of the most heated battlegrounds in the war. After World War II, Poland was in the Eastern Bloc and was a proxy state under the thumb of the Soviets until 1989 when the Soviets fell and Poland became truly free. That's how Poland got to its current borders and situation. Congratulations! You've made it to the end of this week's episode. If you found today's episode at all interesting, please like, subscribe, comment, or follow wherever you're listening. If you want to get in contact with me, you could DM me on Twitter at CultureClubPod1 and on Facebook